Premier Path Wealth Partners is registered as an investment advisor with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the firm has attained a particular level of skill or ability. The material discussed in this episode is provided for informational purposes only and should not be taken as tax, legal, or investment advice. Any market information is from sources deemed reliable and may be the opinions of investment professionals, but you should consult your financial advisor for further assistance. Past performance of investment, sector, or index is not indicative of future results. Please refer to Premier Path's disclosure documents for further information concerning specific products or services.
You shared with me something that you probably at the time never even knew what it was, but you established a buy-sell agreement. And tell me what that meant for the business and maybe even your relationship with your brother, because those who don't know, buy-sell agreement is just a legal document that says, here's what's going to happen if one of us predeceases the other or disabled or retires, and it lays things out. I thought it was remarkable that you did that early on. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, I had nothing to do with it. We had at that point a client coming in pretty regularly, buying a couple bottles, wanting to know what he should drink. And turns out he was a lawyer. And my brother and I were working there every day. And at one point he said, do you guys have a buy-sell agreement? And we're like, what is a buy-sell agreement? And he said, look, why don't you come to my office next week? You have such a great relationship. Now's the time to do this. So we went to his office and he took out his yellow legal pad. He asked some simple questions. How old are you? Who put money in? How much money to put in? What are your long-term plans? When my brother was 10 years older, his daughter was already out of school. My kids were, I was gonna say, very young, if not born yet, but we were just starting a family. So our worlds were very, very different. Fast forward probably 10, 12 years. And he said, Gary, I love working with you. I want to work much less and I'd love to retire. And it was very simple. We didn't need to hire lawyers to do the breakup, and it was perfect.
Welcome, Gary. It's great to have you here. It's a pleasure, and I'm more than happy that you've invited us into your wine room here at your first location. I mean, in Madison, New Jersey. I should know that because we're neighbors. Premier Path is right down the street at Geralda Farm.
I was hoping you'd invite me there, and maybe offer some fresh coffee. Well, we have great wines instead.
And these wines are spectacular, and obviously we'll get into the wine thing. I don't think it's hyperbole. It's actually fact that you've created one of the most respected brands in the state of retail brands in the state of New Jersey over the last 40 years. From 87, when you opened your first store, to the present. It's just been a phenomenal journey. And I will tell you that Premier Path, we work a lot and focus in on multi-generational business owners, enterprise values anywhere from 10 million up to 500-600 million. And it is a difficult thing to build the brand the way you did. And I'd like to unpack that starting where you started in 1987. So let me paint a picture for you first, how I imagined it in 1987. The wine business was roaring. Everyone was talking about Piedmonts and Barolas and Bordeaux's. Wine was the business to get into. You were flush with cash. Banks were banging on your door to give you money, and you started the business with your brother. You can correct me if I have anything wrong, but I want to get your sense of what you were thinking at that time.
Well, the whole thing is wrong.
I knew that.
I know.
You
You were setting me up.
Yeah.
No, but back when we started, right, in 87 in retail, the wine business wasn't booming, right? It was just, especially in New Jersey. New York was starting to boom a little bit. California was booming. New Jersey was lagging behind. And it felt like something was changing, but it wasn't there. There was no shot a bank would give us money. And getting wines, Piedmont and Barolos, Morescos, French wines, we have better access in New Jersey, but we were a very small store.
And was the appetite really there from the general public? I mean, I'm going back to maybe you saw Louis Martini in 1980, and that was your inspiration. You'll tell us if we go back a little further, but I'm picturing when I grew up, gallo bottles of wine. Am I wrong?
No. When we opened, right, a good Burgundy for us was a 4-liter Carlo Rossi Burgundy, right? So it was Chablis was not French Chablis like we were talking about. It was Paul Masson Chablis. And Paul Masson would sell no wine before its time. And that's when we opened the store. We were Bud, Coors, Miller, handles of 175s of Smirnoff, Bacardi, Seagram 7. That Almaden, Carlo Rossi, Paul Masson jugs. So that was the core of the business when we first opened. But there was an appetite, and you could see that starting to happen. So did we get lucky, or the beginning of the curve was a brilliant decision? I'll take luck on that one for sure.
So why wine though? I mean, you were a political science major, which prepared you very well
For nothing.
for nothing. That's what I'm worried. I have 2 daughters in college and stuff to make sure they're prepared for something in life. But you're a good example of that. It can work. Now, your father was a liquor salesman.
Yeah. So I went to Rider. We both went to Rider. You probably got a degree in accounting or business.
Mine was decision sciences and statistics, and I took a little turn too, but it was at least on the business side.
Right. I was political science with a minor in English, right? With my goal of being president of the United States.
Right.
It was, I
Easy.
figured
You're
have a goal.
ambitious.
I was president of Rider for 2 years, my sophomore and junior year. And I thought that and just being out there prepared me for politics.
Yeah.
But, politics is a challenging world, and you still need to make a living. And when I graduated college, my father was a liquor salesman. And the way I looked at it, I just spent 4 years drinking. Drinking age was 18, so I didn't do anything illegal. And 2 years, in politics on campus, selling my soul. So I figure if you could do that, you could sell liquor. I was totally unprepared. No idea how to sell. My father did it, wrote, he just had been doing it, and, he'd call on accounts, and it was, I don't say easy, because selling is never easy, but it was just how he did it. For me, I was floundering until I went to Napa Valley
1980.
in 1980 and met Louis Martini,
One of the founders. I mean, the originals.
one of the originals of icons of Napa Valley.
My wife will be happy. He was from Italy.
Yes.
Yes.
There were,
Genoa, I think.
yeah, that I don't remember.
Yeah.
But when I left there, I felt like I was an ambassador of Louis Martini's wines, right? It's not like a manufactured product as much, Johnny Walker. It's every year it's designed to taste exactly the same.
Right.
Wine by nature can't be. Every time you taste the bottle, it's going to taste different. Your mood is going to be different. The food is going to be different. The vintage is going to be different. So it's always going to be a living, breathing, changing product, which for me gave me an opportunity to do something that wasn't happening. As a liquor salesman, I was selling the liquor. Nobody was talking wine. So
you were able to differentiate yourself at that point. And that was kind of the spark or the passion, would you say?
it was a desire to make a living. Everybody talks, I love that, a
Find
lot-
something you're good at before you find out.
And that's what I said, when was your passion? I said, well, I needed to make a living.
Yeah.
So my passion was finding a path to income. Selling alcohol I was floundering. Selling wine was easier because nobody was talking about it. So I immediately started studying. I went to Kevin Zraly's Windows of the World and took those classes. I started any chance I had. I went to California to taste wine, and I'm a visual learner. So going to the vineyards and meeting the winemakers really changed everything. And it gave me really a one-up in a time. Timing is everything, right? The boom started to happen. I was fortunate enough to be there and to be slightly ahead of the curve because I fallen in love with and knowledge of wine when I was 22, as opposed to.
So you fall in love with wine and stuff, but I always find that successful business owner, it really comes from, tell me some of even though your father was a liquor salesman, some of the lessons maybe that you learned from him or in your family. I am sure some of those, good and bad, maybe guided you.
There's the lesson in ethic, work ethics, right? Working hard, and that nobody could accuse my father of being the smartest man in the world, but he was the hardest worker. He's the hardest. And and if I could look at my father and say, what did I get from my father? A love for sardines, but that's a different discussion. But a work ethic, right? And when you're starting a business like we did in the fall of '87 with no money, right? People talk about what my business plan was. Business plan was to have some money left in the bank Monday morning so we could start buying again, right? There was
And you brought your brother in, who I'm assuming
well,
had no money either.
yeah, so he was 10 years older than I was, so he
Okay.
did have some money,
Ah,
but he agreed to put up half. So whatever I could put up, he'd put up. Well, I still had no money. And so we worked out the person selling the store extended the terms. So we had a sweetheart purchase deal because he needed to sell, right? He was obligated to sell and he needed a buyer. Thought I was 28 going on 29. And so he thought because Madison, New Jersey, in his mind, was becoming a wine community. And he thought I was the only person he knew that had energy, drive, determination, and knowledge of wine to take over this location.
so was it also his encouragement to take that leap, though, that you're going to own your own store is different? Like your father worked for somebody. Where did that come from?
To this day, I don't know. People give me more credit than I deserve. It was an opportunity. I said, and I joke with my wife a lot because I said, "Oh, I think this is a good idea. We should do it." And she's like, "Well, okay, if you want to do it, then let's do it." There wasn't a lot of we didn't write spreadsheets and pro and con and I'm running around driving 125,000 miles a year, calling on accounts, carrying the briefcase kind of thing. And this seemed like a cool part-time job. Because when he sold it to us, the amount of business the store was doing, he said could never sustain a family. It could be a adjunct, but never a business unto itself. So I kept my day job. We hired a manager. My brother kept his day job, and I would come up nights and weekends. So I'd have my day job Monday through Friday during the day, and when I finished up, I'd end up here Saturday and Sunday all day here.
Well, 40 years. Certainly you built up some grit and resilience. I always like to talk, and we spoke about this, failures. And any business person knows that it can be a gift if you survive it.
Right.
And you had a lot of these, I would say there could have been stumbles, but I want to zero in on one thing. On the other hand, I want to also point out that your timing is impeccable, in that I'm in wealth management business. And I noticed that you started the business when there was a crash in '87. Your first store in Bernardsville was during the
Well,
9.
let's be clear.
Okay.
We bought the store right before.
Okay. So you're a leading is
So we're a leading indicator of getting out of the stock market.
okay.
So we bought the
Into
store
wines.
in '87,
Yes.
right before the market collapsed.
Bernardsville was
Bernardsville,
the
we
tech
opened-
bubble.
And we opened in August of '01.
Right. So you're going through that.
So then we opened Wayne.
Oh, wait.
'08.
Something happened in '08.
So
Housing and
and we had some
Financial
stores in between, smaller stores that we bought and sold,
Mhm.
but the three bigger stores all dealt with economic disaster.
well, what I'd like to do when this is over, maybe we can work something out. You can
I'll call you
consulting,
if I'm
call
buying
me,
a
and
new
if you're going to be
store.
doing anything, we'd like to know. But you can speak to any of those that you overcame. But I wanted to talk, and we've spoken a little bit about this. Your love 40 years later, I think it drove you to Napa.
Yeah.
And that was a passion of yours. And you opened a store in Napa. Once again, what happened in the past, I think you had a fire and then a pandemic, of course. That was in 2019.
Yeah, well, so we opened a store in 17 and closed there, 2017,
Yeah.
and nothing went wrong, right? So maybe the spell was broken. Fast forward, I was in Napa in 2019, in February of 2019, and they had a Dean and DeLuca, which I used to go to all the time, and it was failing, right? And I talked to a couple people, and it was the corporate, the people that bought it, was going south. So I called my wife and I said, Liz, honey, what do you think about buying a store, Dean and DeLuca, taking it over in Napa? And she said, sure, honey, whatever you want to do is fine. I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt she was doing a crossword puzzle and she wasn't listening. The good news is now she listens to every word I say. So we started negotiating, and Dean and DeLuca went out of business in July of 19. We did rapid fire. We signed a lease quickly. We worked with local. I had a lot of friends. Everybody was gung ho to help us get going, help us to a point. There's always that, caveat.
Sure.
We'll direct you, but. And we opened October 4th of 19. And there was the threat of a fire. There were huge winds coming. And that's what causes the fires in Napa, because the winds cause the lines to come down. Lines come down, spark the fire. So we were warned of a fire, wind event. So they turned our power off on the 7th of October. And we had to throw out all our cheese. We were not prepared for that. Then the power went back on and we reset and refilled, and there was a fire and we lost power again. 2 strikes, we're not even open a month. And then business started going, and then there was a couple issues in November and December, but nothing that we couldn't overcome. And then January, February in Napa are dead. March 1st through that week, March 1st through 7th of 2020, we doubled any sale of any week before. March 7th through the 14th, doubled. We started to run, and then all of a sudden we're hearing. My wife and I were in Napa, and she said, we're flying back to New Jersey. I'm like, why would we do that? This is going to be a quick event. We'll be in Napa where we could be outside all the time. The weather's perfect. The business needs me. It's, I'm dealing with new managers, not enough employees, couldn't get employees, which I didn't count on.
Right.
And she said, no, we're going home. So we left on the morning of the 15th. And we didn't go back for 9-10 months. And that's not a good way to run a business. And so in New Jersey, as you know, the pandemic, we boomed, right? Because my son had helped set up, we had a mobile app. We could deliver, you could pick up. We closed our stores, but it was booming. We created a system to allow consumers to continue to buy during the pandemic. And we had systems in place that we could buy enough to keep it going. Napa's tourism. So it was death. We weren't there long enough to have enough people know us. And we did as much as we could do to pivot, but you just can't. And then we came out of that, and Napa didn't rebound. Napa, the community, right? Tourism was down. The economy just wasn't booming, and we just started struggling to grow. And that's when we sat down as a family. And we said, if it got great, how great does it have to get to make it worth the agita in the middle? And we said, there's no way it could be ever great enough. So we decided, let's bite the bullet and let's close shop. We took about a year to sell our house. We decided not to sell our house because we bought a house.
And we house
Yeah, with 2.8% mortgage. So so it was a good, decent investment, but we decided to see if we would be using it, and we're not, and we would have never. So we sold that last year. So we're completely out of ownership in Napa Valley.
I'm sure there was a financial cost, but the emotional cost. And did you operate differently after that? Or were there lessons that, I mean, some you can't predict, the pandemic, of course.
Yeah, no, but there's, there's a couple things. One is, if there's no lesson in everything you do, success and failure, then you're a failure, right? There's no, everything I do, every time I wake up, everything I do, it builds on something else. Whether it's exercise and you do something, so it didn't feel good, then the next day you adjust it, right? So your mind is constantly, in my world, flowing. Okay, what should I do differently? So Napa Valley taught us a lot, right? And my son was going to Wharton at the time, and he had a class on distress management. And as it turns out, we guest spoke 2 times post that with the professor. And one of the questions is, why did you think you could succeed in Napa Valley, right? So far away from your home. And I said, because I thought I had enough power, strength, me, personal, right? My
You'd
brand,
overcome it. Yeah. You'd
that
outwork them.
that because of where it is, I'll get a great manager, right? And it will help our New Jersey, because now we're in the heart of Napa Valley. All the winemakers come in every day. And so where I was casual friends with a lot of them, now I became better friends because they're coming to my store, they're buying lunch, they're sharing their wines with me, they're selling us wines there that we couldn't get in New Jersey. We're opening up the door. So in theory, it was great. In reality, 10 and a half hours door to door, fires, pandemic, not enough employees. I To think I could have succeeded even without the fires and pandemic would have been a long shot, right? In hindsight, the desire to grow the brand via wine and via Napa Valley, where I love so much, overcame the intelligent decision to say, yeah, that's a good idea. Let somebody else do it. But we made it, we did it. It made us stronger in New Jersey. And it also caused me to reevaluate what growth looks like for us.
So what growth looks like, and in some ways you're a national figure. You've been called the wine guy. You've been on CNBC. I mean, you've been on Bloomberg, I think the Food Network. I mean, incredible accolades that you've had. Um, you could be national, but I can ship advice anywhere around the country. It doesn't cost anything. And Amazon has taught us that everything is for free. But I think it's different in your business. So you have to open a store if you go outside of New Jersey. Is that correct? Or is
Well, there are states we legally ship to, but to the Amazon point, they want to ship for free. And it probably costs, and we've gone through this, a minimum of $50 to $100 a case to ship, right? Depending where we're shipping. And that's material, time. So the shipping business is expensive and not necessarily profitable. What we talk about all the time is the branding, right? So if somebody comes to us with a 100 case opportunity, our retail stores maybe can sell 40, 60 cases. And if you could sell 40, 60 cases online, that allows the retail to be more profitable as long as you're not losing money online. So the online business, thanks to Amazon partially, and the mindset, right, is not a very profitable business. And I've seen people come in and go out, right? Stores say, oh, I'll open a store here and I'll have one in New York and I'll have one here, and they disappear because it's very hard to make money uh, as a shipping business. We're retail brick and mortar that also offers the service of shipping.
I'd like to shift. You just brought up something that reminded me of when you started in '87 and you described yourself really as an operator. I mean, you personally, with your grit and hard work, you're stocking shelves, hoping you have a good weekend, and then you start all over again. And then your second store was in 2000. And it's important to know that the branding wasn't Gary's from '87.
No.
That we all love and know Gary. We'll talk about that in a second. But when did you start working on the business and not in the business? Was there a point that you're like, this is more than the neighborhood liquor shop, right? I mean, tell me about like that.
To give a little right turn on history.
Yeah.
So we opened in '87, and then we took over Kings and Summit, was our second store. Then we opened up a store in Livingston, was our third. The Livingston store was called Madison Shoppers Discount Liquor Wine Warehouse because Madison was booming.
Did anybody?
No. So then when we were getting ready to open Bernardsville, we hired a facilitator. First time I ever spent money outside of just doing business. And we met in Livingston, and the facilitator put a whiteboard up, and we had a 18 customers there that we had invited. And they said, what is the name of the store you're sitting in? There were 10 different names. Warehouse, discount, wine, world of liquors, discount wine liquors. Nobody had the name right. And They said, well, when you write a check, what do you do? Oh, they just stamp it. So I don't even know the name. They said, well, what do you tell people you're doing on Saturday?
Right.
Oh, I'm going to go see Gary and have him pick out wine for me. And they wrote Gary on the board and everything changed. And it's funny, when we changed the name to Gary's, clients, friends that have been coming to the store forever said, oh my God, you bought the store. I'm like, no, we've owned it for years. They said, oh, it's now your name. I thought you just bought the store. And it's really just, that was a branding. And that branding led to everything else. Right now, it made it,
Gave you focus to how you would
and who we are.
and who you are.
Right. And that's
You
really,
knew who you were,
yeah,
but now you knew where the business.
yeah. And then Burnsville, the landlord came to us. That's how most of our growth occurred. Is somebody saying, I want this Madison type location in my strip center. And that's how we ended up in Burnsville. That's how we ended up in Closter, so it's been a series of fortunate opportunities,
Well, thank you for going to Barnesville. I live in Baskin Ridge, and I think I moved in there right around the time you launched the
Perfect.
business. So
That's
it's
why
been-
we opened there.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to shift a little bit to your family. We spoke about you opened the business with your brother. You shared with me something that you probably at the time never even knew what it was, but you established a buy-sell agreement. And tell me what that meant for the business and maybe even your relationship with your brother, because those who don't know, buy-sell agreement is just a legal document that says, here's what's going to happen if one of us predeceases the other or disabled or retires. And it lays things out. I thought it was remarkable that you did that early on. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, I had nothing to do with it. We had at that point a client coming in pretty regularly, buying a couple bottles, wanting to know what he should drink. And turns out he was a lawyer. And my brother and I were working there every day. And at one point he said, do you guys have a buy-sell agreement? And we're like, what is a buy-sell agreement? And he said, look, why don't you come to my office next week? You have such a great relationship. Now's the time to do this. So we went to his office and he took out his yellow legal pad and he asked some simple questions. How old are you? How old are you? Who put money in? How much money to put in? What are your long-term plans? And my brother was 10 years older. His daughter was already out of school. My kids were, I was going to say, very young, if not not born yet, but we were just starting a family. So our worlds were very, very different. And so he came back to us with a one-page and a half document. And that's exactly what it was. Because he's older, if he wanted to leave early, the key couple paragraphs were if he wanted to leave earlier, right? Because I'm younger, I still need the business. And it was very simple. The math was right there. Everything was right there.
Here's the value of the company. Here's what happens.
Exactly. And fast forward probably 10, 12 years, my brother went through a divorce and was, looking at his life differently. And he said, Gary, I love working with you. I don't want to work like you do. I want to take a deep breath and work much less. And I'd love to retire. So he took out the crumpled yellow legal document. Actually, it was now typed up on one page and looked at what the numbers said. I was okay. Are you okay with this? Yep, done. So he retired, still my best friend, right? So by having that one-page document, changed everything. It allowed me to continue the business, allowed him economics to do what he wanted to do because now the business had a value. When we wrote the document, it didn't. Right. So if you think about it, which is really crazy, when the document was written, we had no value.
But there was a mechanism to value the business.
Yeah. And the relationship and how he was leaving. And it was very simple. And so there was we didn't need to hire lawyers to do the breakup. It was really very simple. And it was perfect, so from that allowed us to continue like nothing ever happened. It was almost nothing changed.
Right. And the most important, yes, It preserved Gary's marketplace and what it was, but the relationship and the family.
Absolutely.
And that could have been, we see so many families that aren't preparing and should be thinking about that. Staying on the family theme, your son wasn't a political science major. He worked for a major accounting firm.
Yeah.
He went to the Wharton School. He was more prepared to help, I guess I would say. And now he is the CFO
Yeah.
and also has a partial CFO business working with other firms. Can you tell me a little bit about how he came to work for you? And I'm always really interested in how do you separate when he's the employee and when you're the father?
Let's be. He started with dusting, right? So he was 5 or 6. He'd come in the store with both kids, and I'd give them dusters, and they would walk around dusting.
So this work ethic is genetic. It goes through a couple generations.
Probably. But he got an accounting degree and then his MBA. And the plan was, so he worked outside the business.
Smart.
And then he was going to get his MBA. After the MBA, work outside the business. And then if the business needed or a desire, or I want to start slowing down, or he wanted in, he would join. The problem was he was finishing his second year in the spring of 2020. And everything closed, right? So he moved home. The business needed immediate technological support. That's not me, right? So he and I actually literally with my son-in-law, daughter, infant, dog, all in our house now. They moved back from Chicago to be with us, so that they would have help because they both work. And so we would sit in our family room, our sunroom. We both have our laptops. And I would talk to one of the stores and they'd say, Gary, we've got a problem. And I would turn to Michael and he would say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so he had been working on a mobile app. So we had a mobile app, but we only had like 3,000 users. By the end of the first month of the pandemic, we had 30,000 users or whatever. So he was attacking the technology side.
That whole e-commerce is
unbelievable.
exploded.
We couldn't get all the orders delivered. So he reached out to somebody that he knew from Wharton who found out that Hertz was in trouble and got us a contact at the local Hertz truck rental. So we rented 10 Hertz trucks for virtually no money. He found through his connections a Marriott head of Marriott rewards program who was furloughed. And that person brought 4 or 5 Marriott reward people. Then he converted our phone system from ringing in the store to ringing into like the ether. So these now who was answering the phone? Marriott reward people. And they would solve as much as they could through some technologies that he had set up. And then they would call the store with a specific problem, right? So instead of people calling and waiting on the phone, the people are used to dealing with clients, right? Because our cashiers are not. We're helping solve the problems. When my order coming, okay, let me look it up. And if it was more complicated, they would call the store or one of us would jump in. So we literally spent 6 months in war room mode. To big problems, technology, phone systems, to little problems. We don't have enough boxes to package up things, to finding a company to sell. And so we sat there literally, and as the dust was settling, I'm like, so do you want to stay or go? He said, well, why don't we stay? And so he became, a year later, he became the CFO, but he still oversees marketing, personnel. He does everything not retail. I'm still retail 100%. He is not. And as he says, he doesn't get the retail, he loves the numbers. He loves the business. He loves managing and overseeing. I walk the store. Right. I love engaging with clients.
Yes.
I look at the shelf and I see what's missing.
Yeah.
I look and I see dust. It's a different mindset.
But what a great partnership too. That technology and e-commerce, and we could even talk about AI down the road, but combined with what I'll bring up later, your secret sauce, which I think is the service model, is incredible. You have a daughter also.
Yeah.
And how do you view in a family now that your son's involved in the business? You've heard this, I'm sure, many of the business meetings you've gone to with peers and stuff, fair versus equal in succession planning. What do you believe in? Fair or equal?
I mean, and in our will and everything's equalized, right? That's the term that was used. Our two kids are best friends.
Yeah.
Our will is very protective of that. So it spells out a lot of detail, if you would, to try to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And, and my daughter lives in Chicago. Her husband's a lawyer. She's a therapist, trauma therapist. And what she does is very hard and she's great at it. I couldn't be prouder of her for that path because that's who she is. Our son is different, right? I used to joke that both kids were the same. They wanted to make the world a better place. My son wants to make it by hiring as many people as possible. And my daughter wants to help everybody one by one, solve their problems. So they're not the same people. So equal is not, it's how do you be equal when everything is different? But as a family, you could definitely be fair. That's right. You know what I mean? And make sure that both have their needs met. And coming from nothing, right? I look at the world very differently. When I joke, nothing meant nothing. You know, I didn't have an inheritance coming from my parents, right? When my father finally passed away at 95 or 94, each kid got a couple $1,000. Each grandchild got a couple $1,000 because there was nothing there. So I never looked at the world as what's coming to me. I paid for my own college. I paid for every car. There's no greater joy than me being able to pay for my kids' education or to provide them a little extra something and they can both do it on their own now. But, helping them out.
It's amazing, and I can really relate. I had a similar path, and I'm sure you think a lot about, but it sounds like some of those values that you have, you've been very successful in passing on to your kids. Because some of us worry that we've taken the gift away from them, that them getting too much, and that's always objective. But it sounds like they're well grounded.
Yeah, I think so. And when I do, we talked briefly before about charity. I do a lot of charity work. And I do New Jersey Battered Women. I'm the MC, and that is I call it the hardest 7 minutes of the year, where I get up there after somebody that has used the service speaks and asks for money. And it's a fund the mission money. So we're not giving them a week in Florida. And I always say, a term I coined is good begets good. And when our kids were growing up, we didn't give them allowance. We tried the allowance thing, but it never made sense because if they needed new sneakers, we gave them new sneakers. So it was, if you do good, if you are good, good will happen. So, and that's the way we raised our kids. That's the way we live. And so they live in the world of, it's not what's in it for me. It's what can I give? What can I do? And so we're very fortunate
Oh,
that
the
way.
gift that you've given is it's in our business, we can help people pass on assets tax efficiently, but you're passing on values too. And
And hopefully some assets.
and some assets too. Well, on that point, how do you look at, is there an obligation of your son, Michael, to continue the business? And how do you view that legacy piece of it?
Absolutely no obligation. It's funny because we've talked about this and people ask me, what's it going to be? I'm like, if and we've always said if he wants in, he could have in. If he doesn't, if he wanted to leave tomorrow, I would just sell, you know. And if somebody wanted to change the name, they'll change the name. I am very fortunate that we came from where we are to where we are now. This business and this world has been very good to me, but nothing is permanent. So I guess my big point is that if he wants to stay and take over and become the CEO, it's there for him. If he chooses to do that, or and he really wants to keep the businesses in the family, we'll do that. And maybe we're talking about training and getting some of our key managers, giving them more responsibility in economics to incentivize them to be more involved. But he would have to be the conduit to that. If he said, Dad, it's time, we could cash out and generate much more wealth than continuing to fight the fight. Retail's tough. Then I would sell.
You're okay. So the legacy isn't defined necessarily by this. It's what you built, but it's the family.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be. It was a slow start for us to have a family. And once we got one, that comes first above anything.
Congratulations. I want to shift to your secret sauce, and I'll call it the experience over the transaction. It's how you built the business. It's your side of the business. I notice when I come into a store that, and you use the term guest, we use client versus customer. I know that we share this animosity to the word customer, and it's on purpose. And the questions that somebody asks you in the relationship you develop, you often feel like they're going to share that bottle of wine with me. And I know that's intentional. And I wanted to ask you how you've been able to, obviously it was natural to you at some point, but how you've been able to institutionalize that through your organization.
That's the tough part, right?
Yeah.
For me, it is natural. I see somebody, I smile, I greet them. I joke that I, I feel like you're coming to my home. And when people come to your home, you treat them differently than if it's just a transactional relationship. And I'm on the floor pretty regularly still. So introducing the way to do it to our staff, to the wine team in particular, but to everybody that works for us in the same way. Greet everybody. Just a hello, how are you? This is not, hi, may I help you, right? Because first off, that's yes or no. No, I don't need help. Hi, how are you today? Oh, fine, thanks. Let me know if you need any help. No, I'm good. Circle back around. If they were standing in Chardonnay staring, hey, is there something I could help you with? I just had this Chardonnay the other day. Or start just chatting, right? What if you had that you like? Is there something you hated that you want to tell me about?
Where are you going? Who are you going with? I mean,
Exactly.
now you're getting personal, and it's a
Oh,
personal relationship.
going to my boss's for dinner. Okay. How much you like your boss? What was the last raise you got? And sometimes we joke about it, but it makes people feel better. And it's not just a bottle of wine, it's a relationship, the wine from us, or the bottle, or the gifts from us to them, and then to what they're doing with it, right? When they leave here, most of the people are not just putting in a closet for 10 years. There are some wines that they do, but most of the wines are being consumed immediately. I want them over dinner to say, oh my God, that wine was really cool. And it fit the bill. It was exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know that's what I needed. So it's training, training, training.
Training. And when, who are you looking for? I mean, Apple talks about this, a lot of people, when you're hiring people. Is it the person who is the wine expert, or is that something they are interested in? You can teach them all that, and you're really looking for something else, some other skills.
I would love to say that we have a formula. The problem is, in some cases, it's just getting people and then trying to make it work, right? Okay. They're very introverted. We'll have them stock and shows. Oh, this person really shows energy. We could teach wine, right? And we could teach conversation. We've got a woman working here. I think she came in as a cashier, but she's got great energy, right? She's, I don't know, I'm not going to guess her age, but she's a mother. She's got, I think her son worked here first, and she needs the money. And so now we have her on Saturday. She works our tasting bar. So one of the wine associates every Saturday lines up the 4 wines, tastes them with her, explains them. And I walk by and there's people huddled around listening to her talk about the wine. So she probably didn't ever taste wine 2 years ago. And is she an expert? No, but can she have a great conversation about the four wines in front of her? Absolutely. And if it becomes more, meaning they're starting to ask questions and she can't answer, she's got a headset on. She just calls for help.
And her passion is she's going to make a difference in that person's experience with her. And the other things just kind of, I was thinking how your son made a difference from e-commerce. Um, I wanted to get your comments on AI. And because I think this blends into both sides a little bit. And I think about having more productive conversations maybe with your guest, and that you, through what AI does, and tell me what's going on in your business, you're going to know their preferences ahead of time. And does that increase productivity or make the experience better?
Well, it's interesting. I was just at a Chamber of Commerce event and they had an AI guy speak. And I spoke after it. They asked me to do a toast. So, and it was kind of funny. And I said, uh, I need to keep myself awake while this guy is speaking, right? Because I'm not used to sitting still. So I don't know how long he's going to be, but this is going to be a tough grind. As soon as you start talking, I was like on the edge of my chair. And he said there's two things. There's one is you have to embrace AI all in, or or you have to be a people business, right? So he talked about
Is it either or both?
both, but you're not going to succeed, right? You're not if you're a people business, i.e. retail. It's different. You don't AI is not gonna. He used hotel as an example. He loves going to a hotel and not seeing anybody. He's got his app on the thing. He doesn't. I want to go to Four Seasons and I want to be greeted.
Right.
So my mindset is I want that connection.
Yeah.
His mindset is I travel a lot. I don't need anybody. Just to have my phone check me in, have
So AI for the people business is going to make them more productive and complement versus replacing them.
right.
I'm not trying to look to replace.
And in our world, we're using AI now. We're working on it for reordering, for making sure that our inventory management is better. We're working on it for our general managers on staffing. Because it's amazing, you plug in your our daily report shows how many customers an hour, check average, how many different items in the basket, and then it tells how many cashiers you need, and then you give the list of cashiers, and it plugs and their schedules, and it plugs them in. So we're starting to use the AI to have our management team be more efficient, and we're starting to play with it on targeting emails. So that for us a little bit further out, but that's a step we could do and still remain personal.
Yes.
You
You don't want to lose that.
no,
No,
because that's who we are,
that's for sure.
right? And I can't shift. I don't believe we should shift away from being personal, right? Nordstrom's, Four Seasons, Gary's. I want that in the same, high touch person,
Right.
you know?
So is there any, the key has always been for you is how do I keep that and scale it and control it? There were issues obviously in Napa and stuff, but you New Jersey, is there any future? Or is your son telling you have to go to, I don't know where?
We don't,
I tend to think you're an upscale business and that you do better in more affluent zip codes.
Madison, Burnsville cluster is a
Yes.
good example.
So people appreciate that relationship, right? And there. So is that
Yeah.
part of the plans or?
I would think based upon everything, for us, it's about making my life a little easier. That was the Napa decision, right? The aha was, I don't have to work 7 days a week, 364 days a year any longer. And so after we exited Napa, we decided to sell our Wayne store, which is the biggest footprint, right? 24,000 feet. Madison's 13,000. Burnsville's 13,000. Most employees, least profit. Net profit was the least by far. So here, and I had to spend probably 40 hours a week there, and then whatever was left in the other stores. So we sold that just over a year ago. So, and I keep saying it made my life easier. I haven't felt necessarily, but it is definitely, I get home earlier now, especially during the holidays. There's one less manager, there's one less issue. So from that point, so instead of going in the ultimate growth mode at this point, we're more in a holding pattern. Let's see if we can be more efficient. Let's see if we can become more profitable, and then make the decision. And as we've talked about also, there's headwinds now, right?
Yeah.
The industry is not what it was in 87
Right.
to 2020, 2018. It's a very different world. And just because it was great to me doesn't mean it's going to be great in 20 years or the same great. It's going to be different.
It's projecting that.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that a little bit. And we talked about it earlier where since 2000, maybe wine consumption's gone down a little. It's sad to me because we're going to end this and the fun part, because I want to talk a little bit about wine, but people are drinking a little less wine, whether that's for health reasons or others. But you've been ahead of that curve too in diversifying into other products.
Yeah. So we've always had, when we were the little store,
Yeah.
we wanted to pretend to be big. When we became big, I wanted to be little. So that's when when we opened up here, I said, we can't just be a liquor store and we can't just be Shoppers Discount Liquor Wine Warehouse, right? We needed something else. And that's when we got into fresh cut cheeses. And somebody said, oh, you just put a case in and you throw the pre-packed cheeses in the case and you'll be in the cheese business. I said, we're not in that kind of wine business.
You have the best cheeses.
I don't want to be in the cheese business like that. So we hired a cheese consultant. We learned cheese. We made a fresh cut. We hired cheesemongers, people that know cheese. So we created a business that matches, and that's kind of what we did back then, beginning to not just be traditional alcohol. Now we sell THC products as long as the state will allow it. Our spirit business is bigger than it was. Canned, the single serves.
Single serves.
Is
The younger
growing.
generation. Yeah.
And our non-alcoholic selection is much bigger than it used to be. Much, much bigger. We'd call it better for you, which is lower alcohol, less sugar wines. We're buying more. Now, some of these, when my wine team tastes it, we don't love these wines the way we would have loved a Montrachet or something. But for $15, for somebody looking for less sugar, we're picking the best in the category we can find. Doesn't mean I'm changing to me drinking that wine, but we're still going to find you the best we can find that fits that category.
Well, if I'm going and I want a 4-pound bag of potato chips, I go to Costco. But if I go to Gary's, I definitely want these potato chips, which are from Spain and they have truffles, tours. These are the best potato chips. I mean, but this is an example of everything that you do at Gary's. You look at every product and I feel like you're selecting the best.
We try, and
I don't want to eat it here right now. It's so tempting. Maybe I will.
You can, but no, it's everything we do, we try to do find the best, right? Do we always succeed? No. Do we sometimes find stuff that ends up in Costco or grocery stores? Well, if that's what it is,
it could be the best, right? But it's not based on you. And I love what you were saying too about being more profitable. They don't want to leave anyone with the impression that you've compromised your drive, because if there's one thing that you're not willing to compromise on, is there one thing that you're instilling in the organization that you never compromise?
Guest first. Yes, right.
Yep.
And it's funny, drive. I was in Madison yesterday for 2.5 hours. I was in Bursley yesterday for 2.5 hours. I had a wine team dinner with a winemaker last night. So
tonight.
What? We have an event tonight. I had a dinner Saturday night. So although I joke about working less, I'm not sure I'm fulfilling that goal as well, but I'm still having fun, right? So
You're doing what you love.
So as long as I'm having fun doing it and it's making money, I'll keep doing.
What's and I'm just assuming this because of your 1980 love affair with Napa. Is Napa and big cabs your favorite? If I want to get back to wine, where we started.
It's what I call is Napa Cabernet is something I could drink without having to think about, right? Because so last night we had a dinner with a winemaker from Napa, Bubbles. She does Bubbles, Paula Cornell, and we brought our entire team. So we had GMs, AMs, wine associates, stock people that help with the wine. So we had 14 people, and I went to my cellar and I brought a bunch of magnums, older, and I brought a 750 of Duckhorn 3 Palms Merlot from '08. And the idea of that was Dan Duckhorn just passed away. And I happen to have one bottle in my cellar. And it was a reminder to my team that when you look at a label, somebody developed that product, a person, right? Not manufactured. It's a person behind it. And here's what happens when you drink older wine, right? So they were the flavor profiles of these wines that we drank last night, and now none of them were $500 models, right? Especially when I bought them, but they were older and they had the character and they were fun and great. So to answer the question, Napa is still my love affair, but I do love Great White Burgundy. I love Bubbles.
As you know, I love Burgundy too, and we'll be talking more how with the prices going up too, trying to find value there. But white Burgundy is, yeah. And my wife's Italian. We're going to be be in Piedmont this spring, so I need some tips from you there.
Love Piedmont.
See Gaga over there, and just amazing the wines you have here.
Well, you have to have them, right? They're great wine. I love great wine.
I love what you said too, because it's not picking any bottle of wine. It's picking the right bottle of wine, and it's a story. And I think that is what you're about. It's the relationship, not only with your guest, but what you're hoping that person takes away in their relationship as they're enjoying that great bottle of wine and all your products.
And there's nothing better than a client guest coming back to you and saying, "Oh my God, Gary, last month you had me taste a wine, or you sent me home with this bottle, and it was we enjoyed it with dinner. We actually came back and bought another case when you weren't here." That's the best.
I want to thank you for sharing your story. It's been inspiring. I would advise anyone, they have to come to your store, but if you want to start, go to garyswine.com.
Absolutely.
Right? That's where you start. And, but thank you. And it's been a real pleasure.
Michael, thank you very much. So can we drink wine now?
Yes.